The snow fell heavily outside the small cafe window where Mary sat, clutching a cup of lukewarm coffee she could barely afford. Just a week ago, her life had been vastly different, a cozy home, a stable job, and a sense of security. But a sudden wave of layoffs at the factory had swept her out the door, and a landlord unwilling to wait for rent had locked her out of her apartment. Now, just days before Christmas, she had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Her savings were gone, and she'd pawned her late mother's locket for enough money to buy food. Even as the festive lights twinkled outside and carols played in the background, Mary felt like the loneliest person in the world. A sharp gust of wind announced the entrance of someone new to the cafe. She glanced up and saw an older man, shivering and clutching a thin coat around his shoulders. His shoes were worn, his face lined with exhaustion. He looked at the menu board as if the prices were written in a foreign language, his hesitation clear. Mary's stomach tightened. She barely had enough to last through the day, but something in the man's weary expression tugged at her heart. "Excuse me," she called softly, motioning him over. "Why don't you sit here? I can get you something warm to eat." The man hesitated, his pride evident, but hunger won out. He nodded gratefully and sat down. As Mary ordered a bowl of soup and a sandwich for him, she felt a pang of guilt. That money was supposed to stretch for days. "Thank you," the man said when the food arrived. His voice was raspy, but his gratitude shone through. "You didn't have to do this." Mary shrugged, managing a small smile. "It's Christmas. Everyone deserves kindness." As they ate, the man introduced himself as Henry. He shared snippets of his life, a former carpenter who'd fallen on hard times after his wife passed away. He'd been trying to get to his daughter's home 2 states away but had run out of money along the way. Mary listened intently, her problems momentarily forgotten. By the time Henry finished his meal, she felt a strange sense of peace, as though helping him had eased a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying. Before he left, Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled business card. "You've given me hope today," he said, pressing it into her hand. "If you ever need help, call this number. I might not have much, but I know someone who can." Mary smiled politely, not expecting much. Still, she slipped the card into her coat pocket. The next day, as she wandered aimlessly through the snowy streets, her hunger and despair deepened. Remembering the card, she pulled it out and stared at the name written on it, James Harper Construction Company. With nothing to lose, she decided to call the number. A kind voice answered, and after explaining her situation, Mary was shocked to hear the man on the other end say, "Come by our office tomorrow. We're hiring seasonal workers, and we could use someone with your experience." The next day, Mary arrived at the construction office, where she was warmly welcomed. As she filled out the paperwork, she spotted a photo on the wall, Henry, standing proudly next to the company owner. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that the stranger she'd helped was connected to the very opportunity now saving her life. Over the next few weeks, Mary rebuilt her life. She found temporary housing and even managed to buy back her mother's locket. On Christmas morning, she received a card from Henry, now safely with his daughter. Inside, he'd written, "Your kindness saved me, but it seems it saved you, too. Never underestimate the power of giving, even when you think you have nothing left." Mary smiled, clutching the card to her chest. In helping a stranger, she had rediscovered hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, a simple act of compassion could light the way forward. Heartwarming message: sometimes, it takes losing everything to realize the power of kindness. Even when you feel you have nothing to give, the smallest act of compassion can create ripples that change lives, yours included.